Hey, Abror, how are you?
Hey Adam, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. What do you make of the market right now? It's pretty red.
Yeah, it's crazy. We are bleeding non-stop, no relief bounce, nothing. It just you know, red
Yeah,
after red, weakness.
yeah, absolutely. But it's at times like these where the opportunities present themselves, and we can definitely talk about that today. The main topic, Hyperliquid, seems to be a massive opportunity right now.
Yeah. It's holding up super well. Like despite the broader market bleeding like crazy, like this week, last week, Hyperliquid is holding up very strongly.
Absolutely. Well, yes, guys, for everyone watching, before we dive in, I'm going to be interviewing Abror today, as he's our expert. But I want to be upfront straight away. We are absolutely biased when it comes to Hyperliquid. It's one of our top picks. We love the platform, we use it. We found Hyperliquid pre-airdrop, so members got in very, very early. So we have massive bias towards it. But with that being said, we think it's one of the best protocols out there, one of the best tokens out there. So let's dive in. Abro, let's get started. Why don't you give some context for those who aren't aware of Hyperliquid? Why don't you get them up to speed in a minute or two?
Um, well, Hyperliquid is like a infrastructure for different financial products. So I think that's the best description I can give to Hyperliquid. So it's kind of a technology and infrastructure for financial products. Many people think it's just a DEX, per DEX, so it shouldn't be valued at like 20 billion, 30 billion because it's a DEX. But I think that definition lacks nuance. I think I would define it as again, infrastructure for the future of financial applications. So that's how I would define it.
Okay, for sure. And I guess on a practical level, Hyperliquid is a blockchain, and it's also its star project is a PERS platform, correct?
Um, yeah, majority of the revenue comes from the perps, but yeah.
Okay, perfect. And I guess a question that comes off the bat is who is Hyperliquid competing with? When people hear L1, they might think of Ethereum and Solana. And when they think of perps, they might think of like Lighter or Aster, one of these platforms. Who is Hyperliquid competing against?
Um, yeah, like on the surface, it might seem like they're competing with like other perp dexes like Lighter, Paradex, and all these other platforms. But I think ultimately, Hyperliquid is competing with like Coinbase, Binance, and Robinhood, and other centralized exchanges because it's non-custodial, non-KYC platform.
Mhm.
And to some extent, I would say it is competing with Solana and Ethereum, but I think it's a very tiny bit because they have a HyperEVM as well. That part might be competing with Solana and Ethereum, but it's so tiny that I wouldn't even like say that like Hyperliquid is competing with Sol ecosystem or Ethereum ecosystem.
Okay, you mentioned HyperEVM. Can you expand on that a little bit, please?
So yeah, so Hyperliquid as a blockchain, you said it's a blockchain, but in a sense, it's like a two blockchains, like two blocks. So you have Hypercore, where these perp DEX is kind of and major products are built on, and then you have HyperEVM, which is a blockchain that is similar to Ethereum and Solana, and both of these kind of underlying chains they are secured by the same set of validators.
Mm.
So that's why they are interconnected and composable. So you can send messages between them, send assets between them. So they work very seamlessly. So HyperEVM is just the one part of the broader Hyperliquid infrastructure.
Mm.
Similar, in a sense, it's a blockchain similar to like Arbitrum, Avalanche, Ethereum, or so.
Okay, for sure. If I was a developer, why would I choose to build on Hyperliquid over something like Solana?
Um, that's an interesting question, to be honest. So again, you need to ask like whether you would build on Hypercore or HyperEVM. If you want to build on HyperEVM, you can pretty much build on Solana or Ethereum instead because I think it's better in terms of the available tooling and infrastructure, the ecosystem. But what might be very attractive to build on Hypercore, the other part of the Hyperliquid, is the unique products that you can build on top. For example,
Mm.
now they can build trade. So there is a trading product already there, and you kind of can tap into user base and liquidity there. So that's if you're looking for someone and you're building like a trading product, for example, a lot of teams have started building different markets on Hyperliquid, like silver market, gold market, S&P 500 market. So if you want to tap into liquidity and trading experience and users on Hypercore, that's where you would build on Hyperliquid instead of like Solana or Ethereum.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense from a developer perspective. From a trader slash user perspective, we obviously are seeing lots of traders flock to Hyperliquid. And we see that the people who came in for stuff like the airdrop in the beginning chose to stick around. Why would someone choose to work on Hyperliquid over, as we said, Binance and some of these other trading platforms?
Um, I think, again, there are many arguments. I'll start just from the basics. Is that on Binance, it's Binance is a centralized exchange, so it's not transparent. So we all remember what happened at 10th of October last year, massive liquidations. And the difference between Binance and Hyperliquid was that on Hyperliquid, you can actually see all the liquidations on chain. So it was transparent. And on Binance, you couldn't see what happened there. So we don't really know what exactly happened on that day that led to these cascading liquidations. But on Hyperliquid, because it's a blockchain, everything is transparent. So that's reason number one. And the second reason is it's kind of like a culture. So Hyperliquid is increasingly becoming like a culture, like, crypto culture. The choice of crypto degens, traders, users who love crypto, who've been around since, I don't know, 2012, I don't know, 13, 14. And because the team behind Hyperliquid doing all the right things, it's getting support, kind of cultural support from crypto community. And that's why you would probably choose like a Hyperliquid over Binance. And everybody is just hating on Binance and Coinbase because you don't really know what is happening there when this, stressful event happen in the market.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I've seen around crypto Twitter as of late, a lot of people are blaming Binance
A lot of
for
hate.
this up to, yeah, for the cascade. And that's a whole other topic for a different time. As you said, the Hyperliquid community is very cultish too. You see people having the XYZ in their bio or .hl. So yeah, definitely built a cult of following. I think this is why Solana did so well early on with some of their events too. I know a lot of people who early on were convinced of Solana after they went to some of these events. So yeah, very loyal users, huge cult-like following, etc. Now, when we look at Hyperliquid, why are people choosing to trade gold and silver on there? I've seen a lot of traditional finance guys become very bullish on Hyperliquid and choose to move there. What's the reason? Why don't they use traditional channels?
Well, as far as I know, perp is an innovation that came out of crypto. So in traditional markets, you usually use options for like leverage trading. And the second thing is the user experience on Hyperliquid. I've been telling it for a long time. And again, the only reason why I got very bullish on Hyperliquid very early since the airdrop days was because I genuinely liked the product, how it worked, seamless user interface, all these things. And I think other users are loving it as well. So they prefer trading gold, silver, or whatever on Hyperliquid rather than somewhere else. And I'm not really sure how would you trade gold on silver um, in other venues. Like, for example, are there perp markets out there? Because the way perps in crypto work is because you don't have to have like the underlying collateral. For example, the leverage is not secured. So it's just simply Oracle based. So Oracle tells you the price and there is like shorts and longs. So, and you just trade like PvP, player versus player. So in other kind of regulated or in other traditional markets, you usually have to secure. For example, if you're going short on something, you are borrowing the asset and selling, directly on the market. But here you don't have to do that because it's Oracle based. So I think it's very convenient, and it's one of the innovations that came out of crypto. And I'm not sure whether like there is anything remotely close to that in traditional markets, because they use options much more often than like perps there.
Yeah, absolutely. Something I want to touch on as I see it circulating a lot, and maybe you can clear it up for some of us. Talk to me about HIP3 and HIP4. What are these things and why is everyone talking about them? How do they
Yeah,
work and stuff?
yeah. I think this is one of the things that made me very bullish again, like on Hyperliquid back in October and November, is essentially something I've been studying, and it's called platformification of anything of a business. So what they are doing right now, they are letting other people to build on top of them. So this is what like Apple, Amazon did. For example, Amazon doesn't own any like products that are being sold in their platform. So there are like other like firms, companies, producers, manufacturers who actually offer these products, not them directly. But here, it's a similar logic, this HIP3. So they're letting other people, other developers or other teams to build on top of Hyperliquid and create additional markets. And whoever competes, whoever provides like better user experience or better market wins. Essentially, it's like a YouTube, like creators compete between them, and the more creators are there, the better for the YouTube. And the same thing for Hyperliquid. So the more markets they create on Hyperliquid, third parties, the better. So essentially HIP3, so other teams can now build, create markets on top of the Hyperliquid. So this is
I
what
see.
happened. And there is like 5 or 6 teams now building, competing with each other and creating different markets like gold, silver, S&P 500, Circle, Amazon, all this stock market. So, and it didn't come from the Hyperliquid team. It just third parties built on top of them, which creates this loop network effect. So I think that
Yeah.
was super cool. Uh,
Okay. When it's that accessible to come on and build, doesn't don't we walk into a situation where it can become a type of shitcoin fest where everyone comes on and uses this platform to launch 1,000 different markets, the same way we saw with some of these platforms that made it easy to launch meme coins.
the difference here is that's again very smart from the Hyperliquid team. So if you want to launch any ticker on Hyperliquid, you actually need to buy the ticker. So anyone wants to get access to Hyperliquid, you need to buy the ticket, and the ticket costs like, I don't know, 20 grand, 30 grand. So you wouldn't be spending that much money to just buy so for example, on Pump Fund, when it comes to meme coin, it costs, I don't know, like $2 to launch a meme coin, I don't know, $1,
Yeah.
something like that. And when it comes to Hyperliquid, you need to pay like, and again, it's auction based. Sometimes it costs like 100K to secure the ticket. So you need to be very selective about what you're launching, and it needs to be economically beneficial to you. For example, you not incentivized to launch, I don't know, uh, Coca-Cola market because like no one is interested in Coca-Cola shares. So you are kind of incentivized to bring the tickets and launch markets that end up being in demand, and you end up making actually profit, because you've already spent like 100K to secure the ticket. So that's the difference,
Yes.
I think.
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, very, very interesting. What are the actual mechanics behind it? When someone comes along and they have a great idea, they have some fun, they have some money to put into this. How does it actually work? Do they need developers? Is it a very seamless process? How difficult is it to launch a market?
Um, the first step is to secure the ticket. It depends on the demand for that particular slot. So it's auction based. So if there is a lot of competition at that point of time for the ticket, for an additional ticket, you might end up paying like, I don't know, 100K, 120K. But there were cases people paid like $1 million for a ticket. So so that's the first step. The second step, there are like, I think there are like technical documentations, and developers go ahead and actually create the market, kind of link the ticker with the market, and then you need to have like some market makers to kickstart the trading. And then if people, traders like your market, it just more volume, more open interest. And since there is more open interest, more liquidity available, so more traders. So it's kind of more feasible for traders to go ahead and trade that asset. So that's the whole process.
Okay, fascinating. Yeah, I think you did a tremendous job of
It's
explaining.
relatively easy. Like if you have like all the technical skills, it takes like a day or two to launch a new market. But
Yeah,
again,
no,
it's like from the technical point of view, you need to do the research and cost and benefit analysis whether it makes sense to launch the market first. But the process itself is relatively easy.
yeah, well, it makes sense. A lot of these big funds, institutions, companies, etc., they already know there's a market. They're already succeeding in a different, on different rails. So for them, it seems like a no-brainer to come along and capture some extra market share, and they already know it works. So it's just about them expanding their reach. So you did a great job of explaining HIP3. Talk to me about HIP4.
Yeah, just one last point regarding HIP3 because I think I missed something. And you also need to stake hype to launch,
Mm,
to actually launch your own market to participate in HIP3. And this is where the DATs come into play because they want to accumulate. I was listening to this guy. I forgot they renamed the company. Now it's called PURR, kind of PURR.
mhm,
So what they're saying is that Hyperliquid, um, everybody have heard about Hyperliquid already in TradFi. Like, big market making companies already heard about it. And for example, they want to accumulate hype and later, first of all, it's capital appreciation, but second of all, they can lend to these big market makers, to these big banks, so that they don't have to buy the hype tokens to stake if they want to launch a new market. So they can just borrow for 2, 3, 4% from a DAT. And then they could stake that hype and launch their own market, make money without actually buying hype. So
mhm.
that's very smart, I think. Like, and here that actually makes sense, right? So
Yeah, that makes a lot
again,
of
the last
sense.
point was that you actually need to stake hype to be able to launch the market.
Yeah, that's a big one. Absolutely. It just makes the actual hype token so much more valuable. And it's very cool to see. There's been tens of L1s and so many different platforms, but I haven't seen any project in crypto, to be honest, capture the attention of traditional finance guys as well as Hyperliquid has. So it's very cool to see, and one of the reasons we're very, very bullish. So yes, let's move on to HIP4 now.
So HIP4 is um, actually what made market even more excited about hype. So speaking shortly, it will allow Hyperliquid to launch prediction markets. So they called um, outcome based markets, but like essentially it's a prediction markets, but not limited to prediction markets. So we all know Polymarket, Kalshi, they're doing like billions in volume. They're valued at like 10, 20 billions of dollars. Um, so they're doing pretty well overall. Even like President Trump was like referencing and citing Polymarket. Oh, I'm doing well on Polymarket. So everybody had, like, we cannot deny they've been very successful. So they're tapping into that market now. So HIP4 essentially allows these outcome based events, which makes it even crazier. Like they've already doing well with HIP3 and just shows how team like they don't want to stop. They want to just go, 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 go. Let's eat that Binance's market share. Now they want to eat Polymarket's market share. And I think they will do well because the UI UX is super cool. Traders love it. And it's just another, product that will generate additional fees and buybacks to hype. And that's why like price is reacting.
Okay, no, that's really good. That's a really good insight. I think a lot of people, when they heard about it, would have said they're a bit late to the game. As you mentioned, everyone's heard of Polymarket. Right? It's referenced pretty much all over every news channel you can think of. So it's very interesting to see them try and tap into that. Do you believe they really will capture a decent portion of the pie here, or is this just something to catch headlines?
No, like it opens, like for me, I'm very excited. Like I have goosebumps right now, actually.
Oh,
So,
wow.
the key here again is composability. Okay, so you already have perps market there on Hyperliquid. You have spot market, and now you will essentially will have like an outcome-based market where it can be more like an options market. So don't like I wouldn't recommend just thinking in terms of Polymarket. Polymarket is kind of a new way of saying like trading options essentially, but it's more like simplified. You don't go into like, oh, because retail would hate all these terms and gamma, all this volatility indexes and stuff like that. And Polymarket is way more simpler way of trading options in my view. Like if you're betting on BTC or Ethereum, outcomes. Um, so essentially this will allow you to take multiple positions. For professional traders and players, they rarely just spot and chill. They short something, and at the same time they buy calls or puts as protection somewhere. Okay, and
Mhm.
this essentially will complement the existing products, and it will be a completely different game. For example, Polymarket, they don't have liquidity like traders liquidity. For example, anyone buying BTC betting on interest rate decisions can't simultaneously short or long BTC on perps market because they don't have a perps market. So what they do is that they short on Hyperliquid and then go ahead and like buy yes on Polymarket. So they use two platforms. So right now it can actually happen on the same platform. And I think like my personal feeling, traders will love it. Like professional traders and hedge funds, all these people will love this product because they can just go ahead and do basis trade, go ahead and like bet on like interest rates while simultaneously like having position in BTC, Ethereum, and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's very, very cool. It seems like they already have the participants, and they're now just making the market for them, which makes sense. I think they're going to do very, very well with this. It's very cool. They're building a lot of these really cool products for the platform. What's their end game here? What are they trying to do? It seems like they've almost got like a hit list, and they're going down and finding all the coolest projects in all of DeFi, and saying we're about to take you over. What's next?
Um, the way they frame their vision is like they call themselves to house all the finance. So whatever financial application they could be, they want to go after it. Again, with HIP4, now you will have a kind of like an options market, predictions market there, and they already have like this unified margins and stuff like that. So whatever financial application they could be, they can launch it, and they're not even like focusing on HyperEVM yet. On HyperEVM, you can build anything that is possible on Solana or Ethereum, and it would be composable. So just looking at this, I think um, there are many possibilities, like AI agents or like, I don't know, some automated funds or stuff like that. So whatever you can imagine that is related to finance, they likely will go after it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Very, very cool. They've done a great job so far. Before I want to touch on the different ecosystem, the ecosystem itself. Before I do, can you talk a little bit about the Hyperliquid vaults, how exactly they work, and why someone should get invested in some of these things?
Yeah. Hyperliquid vaults, they are again transparent uh, funds, transparent hedge funds, if you say. Um, So anyone can deposit into this vault, and someone, a vault leader, would be trading for you. And whatever they make, they take a percentage of the profits. I think it's like by default, it's like 10%. So if someone good, for example, I would love to be invested in Medallion Fund, led by Jim Simons, who outperformed everyone for the like 20, 30 years. I think the average return was like 60% per year. So, um, it's essentially the same thing, but many people didn't have access to. Now Hyperliquid
Mm.
allows this creation of vaults where people can deposit their money, like 10 grand, 20 grand, 100 grand, and someone, the vault leader, will be trading for them. And whenever they trade profitably, they take cut of the profits. So everything is transparent. Everything is like secured by code. And I think this is cool. And many people run different strategies. So it doesn't have to be
Yeah.
like hedge fund style, like Vault. It could be anything like, I don't know, algorithmic trading, like, long BTC, short all altcoins. Or it could be whenever any asset loses this moving average, automatic short. So it could be like an algorithmic vault as well. So for
Mm.
investors, they just need to do due diligence, take the calculated risk, and then deposit, and they can just chill.
Yeah, see, this type of product, I could not have fathomed it a few years ago. I remember when everyone was talking about copy trading, and there's just no need when you have something like this. And everyone's talking about different like, algorithms and stuff to make their trades, and you get incredible access. You don't know who's launching a vault on there. Are people actually profitable for the most part? If I'm assuming everyone can set up a vault, how many traders are actually doing
With
well?
Yeah, I don't think like fundamentally, like now I'm talking like more like a fundamental investor. I don't think anyone with size would be profitable there. I think someone with 1 million or 2 million can still make money there, trading. But anyone with like 20 million, 30 million, I doubt they can make money there because it's transparent. Um, you know, it becomes easier to hunt for stop losses for anyone interested. And that's the kind of a disadvantage of Hyperliquid because it's transparent. Every trade is visible there. All these funds, all these big players, they lose their edge because once people know their position, they can attack them. So I think this is a disadvantage of like creating a vault there. But other than that, for like a smaller players, like 1 million, 5 million, even like 10 million, I think it's no burger. But again, to answer your question, I think people with like decent size can't be profitable there.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's very, very interesting. I think that's a really important pain point to touch on, is when we do sit here and we share these
Yeah,
theses and
yeah.
we share how excited we are. Everyone envisions these huge funds coming on there, but it's a very good point to bring up. Very, very insightful.
That's
A
what,
question.
yeah, like just a final point. That's what could be improved. Like you mentioned, what's next? They could come up with like some ZK technology that would actually hide the trades, but it would show that this person or this vault placed the trade, but wouldn't show like what trade. So that could attract even more players into the
Mhm.
Hyperliquid who are worried about like, okay, being exposed. Um, so that could be next again. So anything you can imagine in terms of finance, all of them could come to Hyperliquid.
Yeah, it sounds like a really cool plan. Very, very exciting. Talk to me about the DATs raising tons and tons of money to buy hype.
Yeah, okay. I think that's a very interesting when it comes to Hyperliquid. The last time, like the first time I saw a guy like that, the CEO of this PURR company, the treasury company that wants to hold hype. They're very smart. They are different that. So unlike Ethereum and Solana or BTC DATs, they're not blindly top blasting assets. So they said, okay, we want to accumulate, but we'll be smarter. And that's why Hype kind of nuked to like $21, $20 first, even after they announced that they're going to be buying $1 billion. Okay, so they are way smarter. Like that, that's the first thing with their purchases. So they don't want to just like DCA, just like Sailor did, or what's that? The guy's name, Tom Lee did, which is cool. So that puts less overhang on hype supply. So they're buying hype, essentially accumulating hype. And the way they're doing is that um, I believe some of the portions of the purchases is coming directly from Teams unlocks. So Teams unlocks
Mm.
are not hitting the market. And many people were worried and many people sold hype because they were worried about Teams unlock. But the DATs are actually observing pretty well the Teams unlock.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
very interesting.
yeah, that's why the repricing happened quite fast, because people realize, oh, okay, there is no supply overhang. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah, that's about that.
there are some big are there some big unlocks here in February too?
The way they're doing is quite confusing. I think maybe it's for better, to be honest. So there is no fixed schedule for how much is going to be unlocked like every month. So we know every 6 of February, 6th of March, the sixth day of the month, the team will get their unlocks, but we don't know how much. Every month it just varies. Like I think in December it was like 30 million, and in January it was I don't know, 10 million or something like that. And for February it was very small, like 3 million or something like that. And everyone realized, okay, because market was expecting $300 million of unlocks every month
Mm.
for the next like 2-3 years. And now we see that it's just like 10 million, 3 million, which can easily be observed. So that's why people go like, okay, team unlocks, it's nothing burger apparently.
Yeah, I love that phrase, by the way, the nothing burger. That's
Yeah.
great. We spent the last 30 minutes talking very positively about hype. And I think when we talk about projects, it's always important to look at both sides and look at the risks. What are the risks associated with hype and hyperliquid? You obviously mentioned how some big players might stay away because everything's transparent and on chain. What about the security of the system? I read somewhere that they have like 16 validators or something.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
spoke
yeah.
about the we spoke about the dangers and issues with a centralized entity like Binance, right? But 16 validators doesn't sound like too much. So can we dive into that?
Yeah, I think one of the arguments for like having Ethereum or Solana in your portfolio again, like personally in my thinking was that Hyperliquid security is still kind of questionable. 16 validators, you are pretty centralized. And I
Yeah.
think it just takes like a 4 validators to collude to kind of steal the funds from the arbitrum bridge, which is like the same number that is required to hack like a so the Bybit. I don't know whether you remember, but a year ago there was a Bybit hack, and it only required like 4 signatures from the multisig, and the
Mhm.
hacker could steal like a billions of Ethereum from the Bybit. And the same thing here, like only four. It only requires 4 validators to collude to actually steal the funds from the arbitrum bridge, which is makes you pretty much at the same security
Mhm.
level as centralized exchanges. Okay, so despite having 16 validators, so that's the thing I think market isn't paying attention to. I'm Hyperliquid bull, but I do understand that Hyperliquid is pretty centralized. And if I'm holding $1 million, I don't know, 10 million or 50 million, I would rather hold it on Ethereum or Solana than on Hyperliquid, because I know the security risks with Hyperliquid. So that's the problem with Hyperliquid.
Okay, no, it's very interesting. We spoke many a time about the team and how good of a job they're doing, and I think we saw one of the reasons we as a company are so confident in Hyperliquid is the team. They've done a tremendous job thus far. What could the Hyperliquid team do from a technical perspective to resolve this issue? Because it probably would put a lot of minds at ease.
Hmm, I think centralization, every platform starts centralized. Even Bitcoin started centralized. Satoshi Nakamoto was a sole miner like back in 2009, 2010. And after that, over time, additional miners joined, and it became more decentralized over time. Same thing with Ethereum, same thing with Solana. Typically, platforms evolve and they become decentralized over time. But again, the question is whether they will do it properly. Like, for example, if they add additional validators, reaching consensus becomes much more difficult. So it might slow down the chain.
Mm.
Unless you come up with some interesting algorithm, the consensus mechanism that would allow you to still keep the performance as you had before. Because we are seeing Solana, and Solana is pretty fast, and soon it will become even more faster after this Alpenglow upgrade. So it's possible that over time they will decentralize more, but I don't think they can decentralize too much because it will probably slow down unless they decentralize over a long period of time so
Hmm.
that technology surrounding it matures enough so that it becomes very, very fast. So it's definitely possible they can decentralize, but again, at the moment, 16 validators, and it only requires 4 validators to collude to steal money from the bridge.
Yeah, absolutely. That's important to note. And it's that trilemma issue again, where basically you have that issue of speed and affordability and security. So no one's quite managed to crack it yet, but it probably is a matter of time. I guess if that's what you have to sacrifice by keeping your funds on Hyperliquid, just be mindful of that. You mentioned if you had 8 figures or 9 figures, you'd keep them on Ethereum, for example. Now, I asked you this in private a couple of days ago. What's stopping Ethereum or Solana, which I believe has a lot more users right now, and there's more security, at least on Ethereum for sure, from launching some of their own products that basically rip off and mimic some of Hyperliquid's coolest products? What's stopping them? They already have the users, they have the security, they don't have the speed, as you said, but it's a compromise that some people may be willing to take.
Um, I think the first, I think Ethereum is pretty slow for this kind of product. First of all, if you're trying to launch anything like that on the mainnet, is not going to work from the technical perspective. On Hyperliquid, one of the biggest innovations of Hyperliquid was that you don't have to confirm the transactions or pay gas fees, which is quite annoying if you're like a high frequency trader or like a regular trader who trades, all the time, like clicking buttons. And what if you don't have a gas fees, tokens to pay for gas, and then you need to close your short urgently, and it can get congested, stuff like that. The alternative was to launch an L2 layer 2 on top of Ethereum, which is like an app chain that is focused on perps trading. And I think we all know what's happened. So there is already a product that tried to build something like Hyperliquid on Ethereum, which is lighter.
Hmm.
And since launching the token, it's been down only all the volumes left, all the traders and funds and market makers migrated back to Hyperliquid. And you can see on the graph, so the volumes on Light is going down after TG, volumes on Hyperliquid are going up. So it's very hard to compete with UI UX. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that network effects. Once you got that, it's very hard to compete with that again. And the third thing, again, the way Hyperliquid managed to build a community, with an airdrop
Hmm.
by making good decisions, regarding unlocks and, um, buybacks, token buybacks and stuff like that. So giving back. So it's not as extractive as other players, and it's genuinely trying to give back to other people. Like if you're Hyperliquid aligned, um, so that kind of earned them a reputation and, how do I say, goodwill of the community. So again, this is something very hard to replicate. And we've
Yeah.
seen in practice, Lighter, they were claiming, oh, it's going to be Hyperliquid killer competitor. But, you've seen the result. The chart is just down only. So
Mm.
that's what's stopping competitors to launch like similar products. I've read that Solana is also trying to build something like that. It could be, uh, we gotta see how it's gonna launch again. Like if there are like VCs involved and stuff like that, and like it's gonna be like, okay, I'm gonna fade that. But it's possible for them to launch, but there is, no product yet, so we cannot judge.
Yeah, it'll be very interesting as Solana is very quick. Yeah, may the games begin. I think more competition, the better. I think when it came to Light and some of these other platforms, it was just people chasing a narrative. I don't
Yeah,
think anyone was serious about the platform. I think Hyperliquid set the playbook on how to launch a token perfectly. I think very rarely should any company or any product launch a token, but if they plan to, they should look at the Hyperliquid playbook. But this is really cool, Abror. We obviously discussed the team, we've discussed some of the coolest products built on top of it, we've discussed what makes it a great L1, we've discussed why it's a great, perp dex. Could you highlight some of the cool products built on top of Hyperliquid from just developers? We've seen projects like Project X. We've seen some others. Tell us a bit more about the ecosystem and what opportunities are out there.
So there are a few products on HyperEVM that I use on a daily basis. That's the Project X. I think it's kind of a DEX, but what's different with fundamentally speaking, it's a DEX, but what I like about it is UI UX. Again, so it has like additional features, converting yield into like single token and stuff like that, which is kind of very useful in my opinion, and I like using it. The second thing, I kind of like Felix. I've never, like I mentioned here and there, like on the chats and internally about Felix. They are tokenless, and I'm personally farming the airdrop there. They have like a stable coin collateralized by Hype, which is similar to Luna, but like less leveraged and like less dangerous, I would say. And they're also building markets on Hyperliquid as well. So they have like Forex market built on top of Hyperliquid, commodities. So they're competing with other players on HIP3 there. And they have like lots of yield optimizers, but I'm not doing them that much. But it's also interesting to see HyperEVM in general is still in a very early ages, so there are no like a big player there yet.
Yeah.
There is also Kinetic there, which is also
Okay.
quite interesting project. Started as a liquid staking protocol, and then switched to become like again, they are competing with Felix on this HIP3 market by trying to launch like bit markets and stuff like that. And they also have like buybacks and the token and stuff like that. So there are a few projects there that I'm watching, but like overall, I would say it's still like very early ages for HyperEVM.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So definitely some cool products on there. You mentioned using them day to day. Project X is great. Not in this market, but setting up basis trades were very easy with the Hyperliquid platform itself at companies like Liminal. Yeah, it's really cool. I'm glad you use it daily, and there's some cool opportunities there for sure. When we look at crypto as a whole, we look at different sectors, right? We spoke about perps, we talk about meme coins, we talk about RWAs, we talk about privacy, although not necessarily the tokens. Is there a fleshed out ecosystem based off different sectors on Hyperliquid? Like, is there a Hyperliquid meme sector, or is it not there yet?
I don't think there is a meme market, like thriving meme market on Hyperliquid yet. There is a meme called PURR, Paul, like I don't know how to pronounce it. It's a double R at the end. So the flagship meme launched by Hyperliquid team,
Okay.
and it actually has buybacks as well. So any volume generated from traders who trade this pool ticker is used to buy back and burn pool token. But it becomes more like a utility play rather than meme play in
Yeah.
that area. But like fundamentally, it's just a meme. But overall, they don't do memes much. I think they trade perps, like and they trade with things like Doge, Pepe, and stuff like that. But they don't launch kind of memes and buy memes, sell memes, stuff like that.
Yeah,
All
for
memes
sure,
are on
bro.
Solana still.
Yeah, absolutely. I think every chain has its specialty and its niche, and I think Hyperliquid's blurring the lines a little bit, but it definitely seems like the go-to place for a trader, which is exciting, as that's what people like to do in crypto. I think Ethereum is nice for parking funds, Solana is nice for taking some punts, and Hyperliquid definitely for actually trading. And I do think you're right. I think a lot of the people already on the Hyperliquid network will tap in with HIP4 to the prediction markets. I think before we close it, bro, from a technical perspective, like, look, we are early Feb. The market is getting absolutely obliterated. Bitcoin's in the 60K, Ethereum's around 2K, Solana's like 80 something dollars. Why is Hype holding up?
Again, there are many. First of all, this HIP4 is a game changer in my opinion, to be honest. And second of all, I think there were a lot of forced selling on Hype a couple of weeks ago, and everybody was just waiting until the selling is done before aping in. And again, it didn't take long for people to just, ape in. Fundamentals were crazy. They were like buying back 2-3 million a day, and the market cap FDV was like at 5 billion or something like that, which is like very undervalued for a growth platform. And secondly, one thing I've noticed, if you like when it was like at $21, if you actually look at the market cap, it was the same market cap it was back in April when it traded at $15. But at the same market cap, it was now trading at $21. So technically, valuation wise, you were not supposed to make any profit, but you ended up making profit actually from 15 to 21 because Hype is
Okay.
deflationary. There is
Mm.
buybacks and I saw that and I was like, okay, that's crazy. So all these things combined, it actually, and the third, I think the final one was that the unlocks are actually way less than market anticipated. So that's why people like the market just repriced Hype higher. And that's why you've seen this
Yeah.
incredible strength, relative strength compared to the rest of the market.
Yeah,
So
well,
yeah.
it's certainly holding up lots of portfolios, I believe ours included, which is great. Um, I guess, would you say, look, when you see a lot of tokens in crypto, it's a very speculative market, and you could argue that value investing and really calculating the true worth of a token or a stock is out of the picture now. But when you look at Hyperliquid, what do you think the fair valuation is now based off some of the financials?
Okay, so okay, on a very basic level, let's say they are generating $3 million a day, right? So that's roughly like whenever I look at Hype, I roughly project $1 billion of buybacks a year. So if you have a business that is generating $1 billion in cash flow, at what price would you be willing to buy? So generally, if something trades at like something like 10x in like traditional markets, so it's relatively good value. Okay, anything below that, if you really think that the business is good and has potential to grow, that's a bargain, that's a discount. So at $1 billion of cash flow, like yearly cash flow, Hype is trading at like $30 billion market cap. Okay, and I'm talking about FDV because I always look at the FDV. If you look at the circulating, I think it's like 10 billion or something like that, 10, 12, which tells me that like on a circulating basis, it's still cheap. But because I look at the FDV, I go like, okay, that's fairly valued at the moment. But you are dismissing like a forward PE, something called like a forward PE. So with HIP3 and all this, like, and we are technically in a bear market and they're generating 3 million a day in a bear market. So if you think that at some point we'll be in a bull market, you can expect the revenue be like $10 million a day. Okay. You
Yeah.
could think like 3 million, like you could, I don't know, from 3 to 12 or to 10. I think that's relatively reasonable. So if you take into account that, I think it could generate like, I don't know, 4 or 5 billion dollars a year in buybacks. And if you take into account the growth and all of the stuff, so you could do like a 50x PE, I would say. And if you do 50x for comparison, Robinhood trades at something like 60x.
Oh, wow.
So there is still room for growth. So my tentative target, again, it's a moving target. I'm gonna take profits along the way, like level by level. But I think $100, like 100 billion market cap, that's my like rough estimate. Like when the market picks up, I think Hype will lead and outperform. So that's what I'm looking at.
That makes a lot of sense. No, it's very, very exciting. That's a big upside. Is that your bull case or your base case as far as price target?
So my base case would probably be again with current market would probably be like $50, $60. That would mark a higher high. So essentially, it's, if you look at the chart, it's making like a higher high, higher low, higher high, and it made another higher low. Now it bounced back. So I expect it could make another higher high, which would be like north of like $60, $70. Before correcting, maybe it will correct back into like $50, $40 before going back to like $100. So my base case would be roughly like $60, $70. But again, it's a moving target depending on the market, depending on the new information. But for now, yeah, it's just my base case.
Absolutely. Well, very cool, Abror. Thank you so much. I feel like we went into a lot of detail. We explained hype and hyperliquid quite well to anyone who is new to the game. And if someone was experienced, I feel like we went into enough detail. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up this hyperliquid conversation?
I think it will keep outperforming for the rest of the cycle. And I think the ecosystem will keep flourishing. And I think there could be some runners on the Hyperliquid ecosystem, whether like DeFi or AI or anything. So I'm actively watching where the strength is and where the capital is parked. So yeah, I'm just watching for now, because once Bitcoin and the broader market finds its bottom, probably we will have a look like even more closely. Yeah, just follow Cryptonary. I think we called these hype moves like pretty good since like $21, and I think it will keep performing well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Abror, thank you very much. I appreciate the conversation. For anyone watching, if you want to get more insight into what we do and what we think of Hyperliquid, we actually are doing the full report for free right now. So you can click the link below and we can get into it. Abror, thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. See ya.
Bye bye.